brownfield development project. This installed 3 production wells, 7,700 feet of pipeline to connect the wells to the Chino desalter, the desalter that was mentioned by Fran earlier. Construction was completed in January 2013. It produces 11,000 acre-feet, 1,100 acre-feet per year of recycled water, and protects the downstream water quality by reducing the TDS nitrate concentrations in groundwater, primarily due to past agricultural practices and dairy operations in that area. Looking out further to the east, we have the Kaipa Valley Water District's regional water supply plant. Here they constructed some improvements to their treatment plant. They actually accomplished reverse osmosis treatment at their treatment facility, but primarily it was for the construction of a 14-mile brine line in order to get rid of the brine associated with the reverse osmosis. Their construction was completed in March of 2013. Produces a range of 8,000 acre-feet, depending on the quality they need to accomplish their goals, remove salt, and it increases their reliability.
Yeah, on that one, this
Yes.
is a fascinating, wonderful list of projects. With this one, you think ahead, as you do here in Santa Ana, and by making a 14-mile extension to the brine line, I'm sure you thought of, the growth that is projected to 2060 when that was constructed and everything. How much of that advanced planning went into the project design?
This is their project that they had anticipated growth out in their area, and there at this stage is, I think, capacity for the foreseeable future to get rid of the brine in that area. There has been some contemplation of potential needs for the brine disposal out in the Redlands area and Loma Linda if they need to, but at this stage, I think current there's 2 organizations actually that recently have indicated that will be moving into desalting. That is the city of Banning and the city of Beaumont, and so it may be simply an extension of the pipeline out in that direction. The pipeline was designed to anticipate that capacity as well. So overall, the 7 projects produce 41,200 acre-feet of new recycled water per year, 7,500 acre-feet of new stormwater that's captured and recharged, and 930 acres of natural habitat being restored. So that was Prop 50. 2006, really, I thought we had been able to accomplish a lot with that, but it raised to a new level once we had some new leadership. You might know the person's name, Celeste Cantu, former executive director of the state board. She joined us, and she decided to break the previous mold of what can be accomplished as far as collaboration. And my hat's off to her. I remember as a staff member when she first came in and said, "I'm going to have the stakeholders write the integrated plan." I was a bit taken aback by that rather than having consultants. But, we've been able to accomplish that, and I think it's hats off to her leadership. We have also expanded our leadership. We have the regional board, actually, as a member of our OWOW steering committee. We have 11-member steering committee for our organization. About 300 people throughout the watershed stakeholders who are actually helping to work on the plan and develop plan. We recently just have adopted our second OWOW plan on February 4th of this year. We have a contact list of over 3,000. We've had nonprofits, disadvantaged communities, tribal entities, and a great partnership with the Bureau of Reclamation in helping us pull together all our efforts in this latest plan. That, in addition to working with DWR and making sure that we're completing our plan in conformance with the new DWR IRWM plan standards, that raises the bar as well as to what can be expected and what should be expected for collaboration and moving forward in the true spirit of integration. So that, in a nutshell, covers what we're doing in One Water, One Watershed and through SAPA. Be happy to answer any questions.
That's great. I can't help with those numbers. I can't help but think, there are folks in the statewide discussion about the drought, and and I've been down to Santa Barbara recently and other places where we speak about these investments assisting communities to extend their water supplies in times of prolonged drought. I see these numbers of new, water supply or offsets of potable water supply. And then sort of one of the stories kicking around the state is how Southern California seems to be positioned in a fairly strong position right now, as we contend with a historic drought. And just in rough terms, how has the IRWM in your region extended water supplies during this drought period?
Well, I think it really is the key for the future, and working with the stakeholders to help them be aware of what is the most economical way to address our water challenges for the future, anticipating that growth. We know, for instance, just based on our studies, that one of the most effective ways to get at the heart of the problem of our drought and making sure our supplies expand is water use efficiency. And this has been the constant mantra to all our stakeholders, is really focus on that. Recognize that most of your water is being wasted outdoors on irrigation of a landscape that really is not appropriate for Southern California, that we need to be much more efficient in how we use our water and understand the path of water and have an ethic about the water that you use. These are things that we try to do not just for the sake of projects, not just simply say, okay, here's some new projects, we need to do another effort to go after grant funds, but to really try to engender a change of thought about water. This, I think, is the approach for the future. And the other part of this, too, is to recognize, as I mentioned before, that it is through collaboration, by working together as a team, presenting projects that really have a big impact, large scale on a region, as opposed to just bit-by-bit silo approach. This is really what we have been emphasizing and see for the future. Our projects under round 1 and round 2 had continuing types of projects that cover the full portfolio that will address drought needs: water recycling, desalination, water use efficiency, stormwater capture, tremendous resource there that oftentimes flows to the ocean. We're really trying to push the flood control agencies to look at the other part of their mandates to do more water conservation, capture that water, work with local agencies, particularly water supply agencies, to sink it into groundwater locations that are really cost effective. It is the path for the future.
That's great. And I hear that common theme, whether it was from Santa Ana or Kings or Ventura, or and Salinas is looking at those benefits, because I'm going to be sitting on the panel with the Central Coast Board the day after tomorrow to hear about the flood issues there and the opportunities for groundwater management. So it's great to hear from Santa Ana.
Thank you.
Thanks.
One thing he didn't mention, and it's not part of the 50 grant, but they have invested in their upper watershed. I think that's tremendous. There are not that many agencies that are farsighted enough to do that. And this is going beyond the county, going into a completely different park area, basically forest
first, yes.
Forest first.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how the thinking is going to have to grow.
Yeah, systems approach, really look at the watershed as a hydrologic system, working with the Forest Service and their activities, and see how it can marry with some of the activities downstream. Those are important partnerships that we see for the future. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to next welcome Jake McKenzie and Judy Morris from the North Coast IRWM.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, and it's good to see the other board members here as well. I'm Jake McKenzie, the chair of the North Coast IRWM Policy Review Panel, and on my right is my vice chair, Judy Morris from Trinity County, and you can see that up in that slide there. And I'm going to try to avoid having your eyes glaze over, and we're going through a lot of these presentations, so let me see if we can do that as we talk a wee bit about the history here, initiated back a decade ago. And you will notice, in contrast to the last presentation from a geographically a much smaller area, this is a geographically much larger area, about 12% of the state's landmass. And if you think of 6 million people living in that wee bit of Orange County, then all of a sudden move up to the North Coast 7-county area with 500,000, if you're lucky. And an awful lot of them are in Sonoma County, which of course makes some of our fellow counties to the north somewhat suspicious of Sonoma County, because we are clearly identified as the city slickers compared to the rural residents of the far north. And I was interested to hear from Ventura that they are operating a non-political process, which I thought was fascinating. We operate a very political process, very deliberately, very carefully chosen by the Board of Supervisors in each of the 7 counties. I give you a supervisor from Trinity County. I'm the odd person out. I'm a council member in Sonoma County, but we're a wee bit strange anyway at times. But the other thing about us is we have tribes. We have 50 tribes in our part of the world in this region. You guys know the region well because it's the same boundary as the North Coast Water Quality Control Board. And it was deliberately chosen that way as we were putting our political process in place. Policy Review Panel. These are 2 supervisors or council member political elected officials appointed by the boards of supervisors. The tribes, the north, the central, and the southern groups of tribes each select a voting member. That has happened more recently over the last 4 years. That board makes the final decisions on which projects move forward through the process. The Technical Peer Review Committee is also appointed by the boards of supervisors in each of these 7 counties and by the tribes. They are technical experts in their field who are charged with reviewing each project, to looking at the guidelines and the priorities that are set forward in the process and come to us with their recommendations. And then we, as the Policy Review Panel, vote on these. One of the most challenging times we faced in this process was the deliberate reduction from $50 million contract amount to $25 million contract amount. We did not like that decision. We thought that might even have smacked of politics, but nonetheless, we pulled together and maybe I think came out of that process a wee bit stronger than we had going in, because we, each of us, were forced to look at $50 million worth of projects which had been prioritized, and all of a sudden in 3 months, lo and behold, there was only going to be $25 million. And I got my head handed to me by the Santa Rosa City Council because I voted to reduce a project which you'll actually see in the poster board. It's a $4 million project, but I voted for it to be reduced to $1 million so that we could get in under the $25 million. Well, somebody was looking after us because then Monterey, you know, their $3 million project went away, and so Santa Rosa got their, you know, their money back, and they were happy again. But that sort of a decision, you know, with that sort of timing, caused us lots of grief. I think it's fair to say. We were able to get everybody together in our region by using the Memorandum of Mutual Understandings, a less formal document than an MOA or an MOU, but it's basically getting all the stakeholders, the non-governmentals as well as the governmentals, to sign on to the process. And then we revised that to include the tribes. And we then, back in 2004, 2 partners, Humboldt County doing administrative work, and Jen Jenkins is behind me here, who has been working diligently on all of these contracts. And in fact, after today, we'll be going out and looking at projects and making sure that they're properly completed. Humboldt County and in Sonoma County through the Sonoma County Water Agency and West Coast Watersheds, Karen Gaffney and Catherine Gledhill doing the planning work. And so we have been very fortunate in having two different areas in our very large 7-county area that have been involved in the actual work. I could go on at length about stakeholder engagements, but I'll just go through this quickly to say that here are pictures showing that in fact we do meet, we do make decisions, we do have the technical peer review committee. These meetings are open, they're Brown acted, we invite stakeholders, stakeholders are present, transparency rules, and I think we've been successful in that. And as the projects have been asked for, and as our subcontractors have started to develop these, we have put an emphasis on stakeholder outreach, website, workshops and meetings throughout the region, and in fact we've had two very successful conferences which I think you've been aware of, and I can't remember, Ms. Doduk, if you attended the first one or not in Fortuna, but I know that there's been representatives from state agencies there where we have brought everybody together, reviewed our progress, and looked at questions such as where's future funding going to come from, which you had already measured. The goals and objectives we have heard talked about time and time again this afternoon: economic vitality, conservation, beneficial uses, climate adaptation, and as we have expanded our scope, and we are now actually called the North Coast Resource Partnership, we have competed for grants successfully with the Strategic Growth Council, and we are in the middle of getting a planning grant going there to involve local energy independence, water and energy use, and tying that into what we have been doing with our IRWIM programs. The funding awards, I suspect you're aware of, just to say that we also have been successful with not only the second round of Prop 50, but also Proposition 84 of Strategic Growth Council I just mentioned, and we've been leveraging over $65 million in matching funds. And now I am going to turn this over to my vice chair, who is going to tell you about what we've been up to.
Thank you. Oh, am I on? Yep. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and board members. Thank you for your support over these years and having us here to give you an update. If you recall a map earlier, I think it was your staff that had it on, it showed our region all green, and I thought to myself that's very appropriate given the amount of public lands that is in our region. As a result of those public lands, it also has created a limited tax base, and as a result of that limited tax base, we have some more disadvantaged communities. And with this program over the years has really helped, as you have heard from other regions, help improve those disadvantaged communities that are in so many needs. So keep that in mind, and I will touch back to that as we move forward. In round one, in implementation of projects, we see that we had 21 projects in the region, 14 of which are economically disadvantaged. And moving on to project type, we saw that 20 were water and wastewater infrastructure. Oops. There we go. 20 water and wastewater infrastructure projects, and 15 water quality improvement projects, and 7 water supply reliability, with a total number again of 21. And mind you, as Jake pointed out, many of this was a lot of negotiation, diplomatic shuttle sea on either side of the counties that I live in. To give you some frame of reference, I'm from Trinity, as Jake mentioned it, one of the members of the Board of Supervisors, with a land mass of 75% owned by the federal government. We have a population of 14,000. And as you go to the right, Del Norte is a little bit more populated, and Siskiyou and Modoc are slightly more, but certainly not like your urban counties. And they all come with very diverse opinions, if you would imagine. So we have to negotiate many of these projects and yet keep in the spirit of what the project and what your board is looking for. So it's always a learning experience when it comes to project picking, but we've learned from it
some of these counties might even think that they might want to be in another state, who knows?
Yes,
But
I didn't
we-
want to bring
but
that
we-
up,
we-
but
Hey, I will. We still deal with it.
Yeah.
And we still get along, and we still arrive, quote unquote, at consensus.
That's true.
Don't we?
yeah, we do. And we put the caveat, if you form your new state, you're not getting this money, right? And I think as you heard from other projects, that some of the great benefits that have come upon our region is, of course, reliable water supply. You would think that we have plenty of water, but actually some parts of our region really have to truck in their drinking water availability. And as the climate changes and our region also suffers from lack of rain, this too will be a more and more important subject, as well as water quality. Something that doesn't always get talked about is what happens in those watersheds up in Northern California where certain agriculture crop is grown. We're seeing pesticides. So that is becoming more around in our horizon as well. And of course, let's not forget the important salmon habitat and ecosystems that we have improved with 14 projects that enhance coast coho, Chinook, and steelhead fisheries. Again, those industries important to the region's economic vitality. 6 habitat restoration projects. Overall, 4 projects reduce flood damage. And moving on to, of course, community and social benefit, that probably is more than we can describe that's on the page. You've seen the disadvantaged communities. This helps bring local work and jobs to create these projects, finish these projects. Also, a very important thing that I think we can attribute statewide is our enhancement in watersheds. That whole region, if we improve our watershed, water supply and quality improve for the rest of the state. As I like to say to our group, that region becomes the lungs and kidneys of the state. We have great fresh air and great clean water, and if we keep and maintain those, the rest of the state benefits as well. And I lost track of my slide. Moving on to the economic collective benefits. From overall, we're looking at almost $105 million. And as staff pointed out, many benefits can't be quite quantified via financial angle. At a snapshot of the projects, we're looking at 21 projects totaling $49 million in cost and a Prop 50 IRWIMP of a $23.2 million. Despite the gross underestimation and data gaps in some of the metric categories, total economic benefits, we have a 4-time return on investment of grant funds and a 2-time return on investment on project cost. Or not return, but on project cost. So I just want to thank, of course, as Jake pointed out, our staff, our partners in the region, all of you, and thank you for your support in these really vital categories regarding water quality and supply and ecosystem services.
Might I just conclude by saying, earlier on it was mentioned about the coordination and integration between agencies and our local agencies. This has been a long, strange trip, but as we have gone along this decade-long journey, I believe that we have found a much better understanding between the state agencies, amongst the state agencies, with us in our North Coast IRWIMP, and with these extremely diverse counties with diverse political opinions, but nonetheless able to arrive at decisions which we have forwarded to you, the state agencies, and you have implemented. For that, we thank you, and I would just like to pay final tribute to our first chair, former supervisor Jimmy Smith from Humboldt County. He was the glue, he was the magic guy who helped keep us all together in these somewhat difficult times. Offline, happy to tell you stories about that. Here, we're all one big happy family. Thank you very much,
Yes, thank
board. Any questions, by the way?
Well, yeah, what a great story. You know, we hear the stories around the state a lot about, you know, organizing around watershed, and that's a challenge, you know, and at the local level, a lot of population, jurisdictions. Here, it's a whole different story. It's a whole corner of the state And then you're talking about how the North Coast Resource Partnership, you know, you've coined a new term for the organization because it's a new model. And going forward, we heard from, for instance, King's about, you know, the dues and membership and all that. And so you're finding a way to kind of keep sticking together even though there's uncertainty in the future of IRWM funding.
We believe that we have at least piloted a model that could be examined in other parts of the state. And we're also believers because we believe in integrated regional water management planning. It is one of the foundations of the state water plan. I do believe every time I've read it, I find it there. And I find it very hard, frankly, when I hear that people are not happy about monies going to integrated regional water management planning. And I've testified in favor of that in front of the Assembly Committee just quite recently. So we're in front of you as strong believers in the process, and with lots of thanks to you and your staff for the work that you did and have done and continue to do.
Well, thanks. That's an inspirational message. And yes, those rivers, they do cross those county boundaries up there anyway. So it's good to see you working together. It's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome Jane Gray and Steve Kahn from Santa Barbara Countywide IRWM.
Steve Kahn couldn't be here today, so it's just me. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and board members and staff that's in the audience. So thank you for entertaining us this afternoon. I'm here to give you a little bit of a primer on the Santa Barbara County IRWM Prop 50 and start with our first slide. Generally, we follow the jurisdictional boundaries of Santa Barbara County. We have a population of about 432,000. Our IRWM region spans 2739 square miles, and we have a good bit of coastline in there. We have 8 incorporated cities, which account to about 70 square miles, and the vast majority of our region is either in Air Force Base, Los Padres Forest, or in rangeland and cultivated agriculture. We have 5 principal watersheds. They're listed there, and we have a decent amount of groundwater basins. We have annual precipitation that ranges from 8 inches to 36 with an average of about 18. And the majority of our water resources are local. They're either rivers or groundwater basins. Some of the challenges that we found in our region were urban water quality, ag water quality, since that's, again, sort of the majority of our land use in the county and accounts for the major economic engine. Beach nourishment, flood management, groundwater issues in terms of overdrafting and salt and nutrient types of groundwater issues, as well as water storage availability. So our process, this odyssey of IRWM, began in 2005 for us, and that was a collaboration between 29 entities, water and wastewater districts, jurisdictions, everybody in the county, essentially. We have still 30 now people at the table, including one IRWM, or excuse me, including an NGO that sits on our IRWM Regional Water Management Group. And our governance structure consists of the Regional Water Management Group as the overall body, a subset as a steering committee, which is the decision maker body for the most part, and that's 10 different entities. And we have a stakeholder base of about 143 entities that we reach out to. Our first IRWM plan was adopted in 2007, and under that we were awarded $25 million for 14 projects. It's a little bit like herding cats, and there were certainly some growing pains, but we had some good successes. Out of those 14 projects, we had 3 that, and of course they're multi-benefit, but we had 3 that increased water supply, 10 that increased supply reliability, 12 that improved water quality, 5 that restored or improved habitat, 2 that increased groundwater, 2 that improved flood control, and 2 that improved our drought protection. We do obviously receive some state water, and the majority of our state water, when it is flowing, does provide for drought protection, specifically along the south coast of our county. Next slide. Going forward, and I'll get back to our projects in just a second, but we were awarded a little bit over $500,000 to update our plan. And we just completed that and submitted that to DWR. And we were awarded $3 million in Prop 84 Round 1 for 7 different countywide projects. So I'll go through our Prop 50 projects. We had a COMB project, Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board, which is a JPA and provides water from Kachuma Lake, which is a USBR reservoir, essentially, and provides the south coast of Santa Barbara with a tremendous amount of our water, and that's Sandy Ned's river water. And they upgraded a portion. This project specifically went through a number of different growing pains. It actually started out as what we like to call a double barrel project, which was redundancy in the system, since we hadn't really upgraded that infrastructure in almost 60 years. And it was a great project, turned highly contentious, so we went through a lot of growing pains on this project, and we'd like to thank the board and staff for being patient through that process. Bluffs Sewer relocation project, and that was basically just getting people off of septic onto sewer. We had Central Zone Pipeline Improvement and Demonstration Aquifer Storage and Recovery Well project. We had Casmalia Community Services District, which is a largely disadvantaged community, and we helped them get a water tank. They were holding their tank together with duct tape, so it was a sorely needed project. City of Guadalupe completed a wastewater treatment plant upgrade. This was also a disadvantaged community, and they're functioning very well now. Got some training in the process. They have a higher operator at the plant as well, so it's been a great project for the community. Flood control on Mission Creek. And this was a wonderful project. It's kind of a gateway project to the Santa Barbara region, and looks marvelous and has completely opened up a wealth of habitat and fish passage opportunities as apart from just the water quality benefits. Santa Maria wastewater treatment plant expansion project increased water supply, water quality, and water supply reliability. Orindo is a big problem, and we were able to successfully get some of that eradicated, as well as survey portions of Tamarisk and Orindo along the San Ynez River. Cuyama Community Services District, another pretty largely disadvantaged community up in Santa Barbara County, sits sort of on the corner of San Luis Obispo and Kern County. Got 2 projects, improving water quality and another reliability project. Goleta Sanitary District, which sits, did that not go ahead? Goleta Sanitary District got a project to improve their water quality and reliability, as well as habitat restoration, where they moved some piping out of adjacent to a creek. And Goleta Water District benefited from a rehabilitation project. Laguna County got a nice water tank in the process that for their reclaimed water, so improving their water quality. And Vandenberg Village Community Services District upgraded their wastewater reclamation plant. They're wholly groundwater dependent, the community of Lompoc. So we have a lot of successes. We had 14 completed projects, 3 environmental justice projects, a good portion of monies that were leveraged from Prop 50 to for other federal and local funding opportunities. It was very successful in bringing people to the table and helped us to kind of overcome some long-standing contentions, resolve some conflicts. That was really good, and we forged not only new relationships but new projects out of that. Generally, the community got a greater awareness of water and wastewater issues and watershed issues overall. And then there is lessons learned. So again, we had 14 projects. Not all of them went off without a hitch. And I think we were all in the learning process. But we found that good working relationships were the key to successful projects. Healthy communication, promoted attainment of project goals and benefits. Interagency dialogue was really key to getting everything done. So working with state, with DWR, with our regional folks, as well as the local jurisdictions. And DACs were one of our challenges. That's a whole day we could talk about. And IRWM, we are huge proponents of IRWM. It's extremely constructive. It helps us on a local level, on a regional level, and I think it's a great process. So thank you very much. happy to take any questions if you have any.
Right, you were saying going in, there was old wounds, but somehow that funding, that seed money helps salve the old wounds.
Well, potentially, yeah, I think there's that, but I think dialogue really helps. I mean, just getting everybody in the same room and talking about the issues and recognizing that you have a lot more common ground than you do not in common, and that really helps. And, you know, it's been years now that we've all been sitting at the same table, so,
Right.
yeah.
Could
Great.
you expand just slightly on the disadvantaged communities? You said it would take a day, but we don't have a day.
No,
but
not at all. But I think, you know, locally, Santa Barbara County Water Agency is lead agency for this process, and through Prop 50, they provided some seed money for DACs to get some feasibility studies and, you know, help kind of get them on the road to the IRWM. But certainly, DACs don't have the technical staff and the support staff, and once grant funding comes in, they kind of don't know what to do with it in terms of complying with all of the regulations that need to be complied with. And I think, again, as somebody said, it was kind of a moving target in terms of what we needed to comply with and how. And so I think when we have a system in place that's a little bit easier, you know, that support, you know, potentially in patients, and also if there's seed money at the state level, you know, kind of I know that the way that monies come, you know, 10% necessarily needs to be set aside for DACs, but potentially if you were able to set aside sort of seed money funding or bridge loan type of funding, you know, there's those types of things that might be helpful. Thank you.
Good. Well, I know Jim Mon's right in the audience, and he's been thinking about these things really hard. And but we appreciate you bringing that important dimension of IRWM up.
Yeah, but I think generally it's a great thing. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to welcome Tim Carson from Northern Santa Cruz County.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spicer-Webby. Good afternoon, Board Member Moore. My name is Tim Carson. I'm with the Regional Water Management Foundation. We served as the grantee and the coordinating body for the Santa Cruz region's initial IRWM grant. The initial grant was a $12.5 million award. There was an additional $17 million in match from the local agencies. As I mentioned, we served as the grantee. It's a slightly different model than a lot of the other regions took, in that we are a non-governmental organization, but worked closely with the 8 local agencies that served as the leads on their respective projects. Those included 4 departments within the County of Santa Cruz, City of Santa Cruz, Soquel Creek Water District, Scotts Valley Water District, and the Resource Conservation District of Santa Cruz County. In turn, each of those agencies had a long list, in some cases, of partnering organizations that they worked in implementing the projects. The grant funded 16 components that included 15 high-priority projects that came out of the region's initial IRWM plan, as well as the administration. About a third of those components actually featured multiple projects or work done in multiple locations. So in terms of looking at it on the ground count, it was over 80 projects. The work was conducted from 2008 to 2013 and addressed the issues that are listed across the bottom of the slide there of water supply, water quality, flood and stormwater management, and environmental stewardship. Jumped ahead here. So I just have time today to talk about a few of the projects, but I did want to show a distribution of projects that were done with this grant funding throughout the region. The IRWM region is highlighted, the boundaries in blue there. We're on the upper portion of the Monterey Bay region, and each of those dots corresponds to a project that was completed, and the color coding corresponds to the legend there to show which of the areas were addressed. The majority of those dots, 57 of them, are watershed restoration projects that were done in conjunction or with the lead agency as the Resource Conservation District. In terms of water quality projects, those included the county's abandoned well destruction program, through which 16 wells were destroyed, the county's stormwater pollution prevention program, and then the Aptus sewer transmission main relocation, which is pictured there at the bottom. That is a 1.5 million gallon per day pressurized sewer transmission line. It was constructed in the late 1970s And a portion of that line actually ran underneath the beaches between New Brighton and Seacliff State Beaches, very popular, heavily utilized beaches. Not long after it was built, it was exposed during a large storm event and ruptured, spilling sewage into the bay. There was a temporary repair, but went on to rupture several more times. It had been a high priority for the county to get that line repaired, but funding to get the work done had always been a major obstacle. 1.3 million of this overall grant award, in addition to over 15 million from SRF and ERA funding, allowed the county to go in and perform a major overhaul on the system. They rerouted a significant portion of the line inland, away from the beach. They installed major infrastructure improvements, including 4 new pump stations and 1 renovated pump station, and were able to significantly improve the reliability and the function of that major sewer line. In terms of water supply, there were 6 projects that addressed various issues of water supply. The Santa Cruz region, as you may recall, does not import any water from outside, so the issue of securing a sustainable, reliable supply is definitely of key importance to the region. The picture, the project that the photos are of there is of the Davenport Water Treatment Facility. Davenport is an economically disadvantaged community along the north coast, located north of Santa Cruz. The community gets its water from 2 nearby creeks, and the previously existing treatment facility was unable to treat water during periods of high turbidity. And so after rainstorms in the winter, often the facility had to temporarily halt, and the citizens did not have access to a reliable supply. With the grant funding, the county was able to go in. I should mention it was around $300,000 in IRWM grant funding and an additional 1.8 funding from California Department of Public Health and ERA funds. Those allowed the county to go in and install a new treatment system, to install a secondary water storage tank, to bring the site also into compliance with fire code regulations, and provide a reliable source of drinking water to the community. One of the other projects that falls under the water supply quality and also has some stormwater benefits were the county's aquifer recharge pilot projects and policies. These were small-scale pilot projects that were designed to capture and treat stormwater and divert it for groundwater recharge. Using the grant funds, the county the county had already performed, I should say, a mapping of its groundwater recharge areas, but with the grant funding, they were able to go through and identify parcels that would be suitable for small-scale projects. They developed designs for 4 sites, and with the grant funds, they were able to construct 2 of those sites. A 3rd site was constructed with outside funds, and the 4th site is actually scheduled for construction next year. I also should mention that part of the funding went to support county staff efforts to examine the county's policy on recharge protection. And some of the work done went into supporting a new stormwater management ordinance that offers greater protection and enhancement. As I mentioned, a number of projects were done in conjunction with the Resource Conservation District through their integrated Watershed Restoration program. It's very similar to name and acronym to IRWM in Santa Cruz County. This program predates IRWM, but shares many of its same goals and objectives, particularly with the emphasis on multi-benefit, multi-partner projects. The grant funding supported the completion of the 57 water quality and/or habitat restoration projects. It included both a county-wide element and then a targeted element in the Watsonville Sloughs area, which I'll talk a bit more about. It also included the Watershed Education Teacher Training Program and Student Outreach Program, and the Partners in Restoration Permit Coordination Program, which has been a very effective program for the RCD and a way to reduce the barriers to restoration, particularly in working with private landowners. One of the projects that was done in the Watsonville Sloughs area, which is a highly productive freshwater wetland complex in the south of the county, was the Middle Watsonville Sloughs wetland project. This was done as part of a larger effort between the RCD, local landowners, state and federal agencies, and local conservation groups that focused on acquiring nearly 500 acres of land and performing habitat restoration, while at the same time retaining much of the property as working agricultural lands. And as the slide indicates, this was this particular project was recognized by the United States Office of the President for the Coastal America Partnership Award. This was one of 6 projects nationwide to receive this distinction. So in terms of summary, definitely from the viewpoint of the partners in the Santa Cruz region, URM has been a very effective funding mechanism. Although a number of the agencies had a history of working together, the IRWM planning effort and the grant absolutely strengthened those partnerships and enhanced collaboration. There were a number of instances where the grant funding leveraged local funding to get projects that had been on the to-do list for many years to actually get those done. And we have found that the work that was done through the IRWM grant has definitely gone on to continue to benefit the region. After this initial Prop 50 implementation grant, the region also received an IRWM planning grant, and more recently received an IRWM planning grant specifically to focus on greater engagement of disadvantaged communities in our region. And lastly, I definitely want to convey the message that the State Board was absolutely a key partner in this process beyond the obvious funding, the staff members, and I'll mention Scott Couch, who we started under, Laura McLean, who worked both as a grant manager and a program manager, and Kelly List and Sarah Gatsky, who worked as program managers, in addition to more recently Eric, who came in at the very tail end. We absolutely would not have been able to get as many projects done without the support of the staff, and would like to convey our appreciation. That was a lot of information in a lot of short amount of time. If you're curious about the work done in more detail, please visit the website. Thank you very much.
Right, that's great. So one thing I haven't asked the other folks is that might be interesting to talk about is, has this integration of multi-benefit work and building on the RCD's experience and everything and your foundation's efforts, has it helped your member agencies more effectively deal with the regional water board in issues that are priorities for the regional water board in Central Coast?
Well, I think there's certainly an effort to try to bring those issues that are raised at the regional level into the IRWM planning efforts. And I know that the regions, as I mentioned, is currently in the midst of updating its IRWM plan. And when we look at the goals and objectives and the priorities for the Santa Cruz region, certainly the regional board's broader interests are reflected in those as well.
All right, thank you. And our last presentation for the day is Mary Ann Skrpanich from the South Orange County IRWM.
Last but not least, right?
Good afternoon. Vice Chair Spivey-Weiber and board members. I'm really pleased to be able to be here this afternoon representing South Orange County. Just to start out by providing a little bit of context about South Orange County, while we are very proud in Southern California to be on the leading edge of self-sufficiency on water, this particular region is quite different in its characteristics. It has very poor soils for infiltration. It has extremely limited aquifers in this area. So it relies 99% on imported water. So that's quite different. We also have some world-class beaches that are very important for us to protect, as well as areas of special biological significance. So all of these together form sort of the key operating features within which the IRM came together. We started out rather informally, and as to whether the process is political or not, I guess we've sort of avoided that question altogether. When the Prop 50 program came out, it was shortly after Orange County had been working for quite a while to figure out ways for cities and water agencies to work together and have a more formal way of having partnerships, because we had a couple of sort of one-off experiences that seemed to work well, and we were trying to capitalize on that. So we had just created 3 watershed management areas in the county, and lo and behold, the money comes along to sort of help us launch those into reality. So we informally got together with all the cities and the water agencies in South Orange County and said, you know, sort of like the old Mickey Rooney, let's put together a plan. And working at the staff level, rather informally, developed our plan and had a list of 150 projects that essentially we went around the table and everybody decided how to prioritize them 1 through 150. We applied for the grant. As the watershed management area matured, we did put together a more formal governance structure that does have 20 member agencies that you see represented here by their logos. At the time of Prop 50, we also had some nonprofit organizations and the Business Council supporting our plan, and we have other groups now that have been added onto that list as well. But we now have a more formal governance structure of 20 agencies. We have an executive committee with elected officials, and really they form a more of a policy forum rather than bringing politics per se into the decision-making process about our plan. So that has worked very well for us. We also felt, you know, as agency staff, it was important for us to engage the elected officials to get their buy-in and really elevate these issues up above the staff level to really bring them more to the forefront of each of our organizations. This is a photo from one of our focus group meetings, and I like it because you see people really sweating it out, and you've got nonprofit groups and community members and agency folks all sitting around the table. This particular series of focus groups was to help us refine our scoring process for how we later developed to more formally rank projects and build in the incentives to have projects be integrated, as well as figure out what are really the most important things we should be putting investments to. And other folks have talked about some of the challenges. Really integrating and breaking down those silos and getting projects that are integrated, it is a real challenge, and for us continues to evolve. I think we're starting to get there, but that's really, we're sort of cutting the ground with, I think, all of these IRWM regions that have had to start kind of thinking in a new way and formulating expressions of solutions in a more integrated way. I think in terms of, Mr. Moore, your question about working with the regional boards, I think we have a long way to go in California to really integrate everything in terms of the regulatory structures and the way we operate and the way we think about both problems and solutions, and kind of bring a more integrated approach to water resources across the board. So you heard a little bit of the context about our water challenges, particularly reliance on imported water. So a big priority that we had is being able to be really efficient about our water in South Orange County, and to use this integrated plan to help move us there. Our motto was total watershed efficiency, and our aspirational goal was to use every drop of water at least 3 times before we let it go. We're not quite to that aspirational goal, but we certainly are moving in that direction, and this Proposition 50 grants helped us by leaps and bounds to move in that direction. So I'll just quickly highlight the 9 different projects. These are not the original 9, but I think one of the advantages of having an IRWM plan and having projects listed is when one of the ones that was identified for funding and to receive $5 million of the $25 million that we got dropped out for other reasons. We had other projects that were waiting in the wings, so to speak, and we had already come to a consensus on what those next most important projects were. So there were some that came rather late into the funding realm here, and are literally we have one that's just wrapping up this month because it was a late funder. One of the other advantages is exemplified by the water use efficiency program expansion in South Orange County. So this is one of the examples of where one agency or one city had a really great idea for doing something at a small scale, and we said, well, why don't we do this throughout the whole region? And this was doing rebates for private property owners to retrofit their landscapes and to retrofit their irrigation systems to make them more water efficient so that we are wasting less water. Also to have less runoff so that we are preventing urban runoff and pollution to our creeks and beaches. So again, this is one of the examples of integrating and achieving multiple goals. The second project is the Cañada-Gobernadora Multi-Purpose Basin. This one is capturing both urban runoff and stormwater. It's has a treatment wetlands component, so it's improving that water quality. It's got an infiltration basin. It's helping for flood control, and it's helping to actually prevent some hydromodification to the stream downstream of this site that had been happening from a development upstream. The third one took place at one of our areas of special biological significance at Heisler Park. It helped to reduce the water use. Again, it was an irrigation retrofit, changed the plantings, and stabilizing coastal bluffs. One of the other water agencies did an expansion of their groundwater recovery plant and added additional transmission lines. So they've added 3,300 3,300 linear feet of recycled lines, and optimized a non-potable well that they have to augment their basically the recycled water program. This is a restoration project in Aliso Creek. It restored, the Prop 50 money in particular restored 3.7 miles of creek and removed a great deal of Arunda, which you see in the smaller inset. For those of you that haven't fought this beast, it's a mean one. And in conjunction, one of the things that we did do at the beginning of this, again, lots of different agencies and cities had identified Arunda as a problem. Both in that it's sapping up water for supply, it's destroying and displacing irrigation, it's a fire hazard, and so forth. We had mapped the entire area at the beginning of our Prop 50 process and had all of the permits for the region in place so that anybody that had an Arunda removal project could quickly be able to come in and implement those. In conjunction with this particular project using Prop 50 monies, there was a mitigation project upstream and then some Proposition 84 money that a nonprofit organization got, and we've now been able to remove all of the arundo in this one of our 6 watersheds here in South Orange County. There's one little patch down by the beach that's yet to happen next, and the private property owners immediately downstream of this park are going to go ahead now and remove it on their golf course. So we're really proud of that accomplishment. This is another recycled water distribution system. Also created a reservoir and is displacing 930 acre-feet of potable use that was being used for irrigation. Another recycled water treatment plant, and then the map on your left just shows you in the black lines all the streets on which now the purple pipe is laid, and so it's bringing non-potable water again to new neighborhoods. This is the urban runoff recovery and reuse. This is a package treatment plant on the creek that's harvesting urban runoff. It's being used to expand the customer base of this water district for their reclaimed water because it was too high in TDS. So they're using this treated urban runoff to blend with their recycled water and being able to expand their customer base. They were actually starting to lose customers because of the high salts in their reclaimed. And then this is a project that, again, was one of the replacements. It is a coastal treatment plant export sludge system. There are multiple lines in the bank of a creek from a coastal treatment plant upstream, and they are aged lines. The banks are unstable, and so there was a real threat that we may lose that those lines. They've had to do emergency repairs over the years. So it was a chance to, and the coastal treatment plant, it happens to be at the toe of a wilderness park. So it's going to protect, and the lines were running up through the wilderness park underground. So it's enhancing the efficiency and the emergency preparedness at this treatment plant, as well as protecting those utility lines and the wilderness park itself. We set out at the beginning of our grant process to try to leverage $6, 60%, and have a 60% local match for every dollar in the Prop 50, and we've actually overmatched even that expectation that we had. So we've got a little bit of SRF and other grants, the local match, and we were able to leverage these dollars 3.5 times. Finally, I'd like to start out with kudos to the voters for voting for Prop 50, but then immediately go to the staff. We started out with Shala and Scott and Steve, and then were assisted by Laura and Eric Jeff to help us wrap up. And I want your board to know that these folks have real passion for helping us out, for making these projects work, and for really making the IRWM process a real success, and they really deserve a round of applause. Thank you very much. Unless you have any questions, that was my presentation.
I think I believe it was your IRWM where someone in the group had a spill, a sewage spill, and they had the Rolodex with all the IRWM players, and they all turned out with. You tell the story, because it's really a good story.
So there was really, the partnerships have been a great benefit throughout the watershed management area. The situation was on Trabuco Creek, and there were some sewage lines from a pump station that went under Trabuco Creek, and they failed somewhere near the bottom, and it took a couple of days to actually find where that break was. and literally every agency that had Vector trucks was lined up around the block at the pump station immediately upstream of there, just pulling that sewage off. The county came out with its bulldozers and put up a temporary berm in the creek to keep that sewage from flowing downstream. We had Vector trucks pulling it out there, all to help assist the water district that had that problem. We've had, even within the Proposition 50 process, agencies helping one another. We had one of the cities that was going to have to that thought they might have to pull their project because they couldn't go forward with it because of inability to make the match. And I remember at one of our management committee meetings, a couple of other agencies saying, oh, that's, and that's just a shame, why don't we go over there? And, so a couple of them went over and helped out that city, figuring out how to reshape that project so that they could make the match and they could still achieve most of the benefits that they had originally intended. So it really has helped build that partnership and bring folks together.
All right, well, with that, originally the schedule called for some questions at the end, but given the time and the fact that you've been asking questions throughout, I'd propose that any additional questions can be asked out in the poster session for anyone who's interested, and we'll move on then to some very, very brief closing remarks unless you do have any other questions. No, all right. Well, first and foremost, I'd just like to thank each of the presenters who traveled here today to give these presentations and these overviews. Thank you very much for taking the time to come up here and just talk about your projects and talk about your IRWM. We appreciate all the work that you've done, and we've enjoyed working with you. I think we've gotten some really fantastic projects out of this, and as each one of these projects has shown, has really been able to leverage these IRWM funds into real concrete products and results that have resulted in better water quality, better stability in terms of water supply and drinking water reliability, and greater reuse. And those are all key components of what we're facing right now during the ongoing drought. So it's a real world example of how a little bit of funding can really address long-term water quality and water supply issues. The State Water Board's completion is a significant achievement, and I'd just like to say thank you again to all the staff and all the people who have worked on the projects over the years. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leslie if she has anything additional to say, but otherwise, thank you for your time.
No, it's just, it's exciting to be finished, but it's, a little bittersweet too. This has been a long process, as we say, the challenges that we've seen. But the program provided such an incredible array of diverse projects that we got to work on, different types than we usually do. And the partnerships and groups that we did form, we've seen it carry over into other programs and the relationships. So it's really been fun. We continue to work with DWR on their IRWM process. We do have a contract that we provide staff to them. So we're talking with Tracy now because the drought legislation is accelerating their next round and figuring out what we're going to do with that. So we will still be involved with their process, and we look forward to continuing to work with our grantees on other programs. So that's all I have.
I just want to say to John, in particular, Steve and I talk a lot about IRWMs, and I am a huge fan, as most people know, because I really know Southern California has benefited unbelievably from it. And it's not just the bonds. The bonds are great. I supported all the different bonds. I've loved them all. But regulations have contributed positively to some funding coming in, or some directions in funding that have led to outcomes that are water quality outcomes that are great. We do have our cleanup and abatement account. We have our revolving loan fund. I hope we will have the drinking water revolving loan fund, but it will exist wherever it is. And I would hate to see our commitment to the regions that are working together I'd hate to see that ebb. So I don't know quite how we do it. Maybe we need like a. I loved the for Region 1 the what's it called the North Coast Resource Partnership. Maybe we just have to create our own name and make sure we can continue under that name with all our little pieces. But so I really don't want to see this end. I want to see it grow. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Not just externally and all the benefits that you've renumerated and enumerated throughout the day in terms of the relationships, but also internally, and I see that, Leslie, in your last comments, that our alignment with DWR, our organizing of our staff around these projects that are complex by nature, and getting our processes to recognize that and encourage the collaboration and multi-benefit projects. We have an internal infrastructure now that I don't want to see ebb either. And so just wanted to, in my closing remarks, thank everyone for the significant effort you put into today. We're not your only audience. We're on the web, and it'll be on our website for others to see and learn from your experience on how to take those initial steps as a state, to better integrate our water management for multiple benefit. And those efforts won't go unsung or unrewarded as we move forward, and as you've already seen the benefits of that. So we just want to redouble our commitment to the principles of integrated water management. We recognize we have work to do working at the state level with the regional water boards and encouraging this type of collaborative work and having our regulatory and our funding programs support it, because our future is at stake as a state. And I think Celeste may have said this to me at one point, or if not, I can paraphrase Celeste Cantu, former executive director. For water in California, integrate or perish. Don't you think? No, but it's critical, and we're learning that more than ever this year. So thank you for all your hard work. It's not easy. And thank you to staff for all their hard work on making this process work internally as well as for the citizens of California.
I'll add my thanks as well, and I won't try to match my colleagues' eloquence on this matter. They are the IRWM experts on the panel. So I have a mundane question, mainly directed at Karen, I believe. We've heard some really great projects and some really great results from those projects. How is this being captured in our performance report? What are the measures? How do we reflect that?
Well, we're building this brand new site, Tam, and we'll have every project listed along with videos and roll-ups, and we'll certainly look into
seriously,
it.
though, the presentation that Eric made at the beginning of this session hours ago did very well in capturing some of the highlights in terms of the amount of recycled water, the amount, I mean, those to me were excellent performance metrics.
At the outset of our performance report, we've been including higher level metrics. We started this last year, and you'll notice we started that in our annual accomplishments report as well. So it's certainly something that we'll look at building.
But these are truly outcome measures, which, as you know, I'm always trying to push us to move from these output things that we keep counting to the true outcome results that we want to accomplish.
I agree, and I think every single regional board would agree with you as well, and we'll certainly look for ways to be able to build that into the system.
Soon.
Soon.
Right.
Well,
Did I do that well?
that's great. But we certainly have a lot of talent, as Eric pointed out, internally to make this information shown visually. A little nod to Jeff
we have
Capella.
those
Do we have any funding left, perhaps for maybe one of these groups to do that for us?
Well, as far as IRWM, we don't have any funding left, but we do have those metrics captured on our posters. We have our 4 posters that summarize that. And so at least for this program, it's with this program we could divide the projects into similar types and benefits. You know, we tend to look at trying to do that with our other funding programs too, which focus on one little thing, like we'll look at beaches, at the amount of pollutants, you know, that we've kept off beaches. So we do try to capture some of those metrics in different ways in the different programs. This one, we had such a multiple benefits. It was really interesting, and projects overlapped. A lot of them had, you know, more than one type of benefit, but we really captured, you know, the benefits we were getting. And we do that in all of our projects that we fund. We have them look at the effectiveness of the projects, and they all have individual performance measures for projects. A lot of times they're, you know, diverse types of measures, so it is hard to sum them up over a whole program. This one lended itself really well to being able to summarize those. But, you know, we do try to capture that programmatically.
And for the record, I know that you do ask for that information. And I mean, I see it as one of the true success stories for performance measures. And so, and we don't highlight that enough, so.
We'll be doing that with our Prop 84 stormwater because we have, you know, again, similar types of measures that people are reporting on.
So with that, I will adjourn the meeting today, and we'll reconvene outside at the poster session. Thank you.